Apropos song right here. 822 at WIBX. Terrible tragedy in New Orleans. Jonathan Bullington is with the Times-Picayune, NOLA.com, and on the line here to talk about Will Smith. Good morning, Jonathan. Thanks for taking the time with us here this morning.
Good morning.
What's the latest? Apparently there's a person who claims that Will Smith might have been the first one to say, I have a gun. Is that what we're hearing today?
Yeah, there were kind of two developments yesterday, and the first one was, the guy who was arrested in Smith's death, Cardell Hayes.
Yeah.
His attorney had suggested the presence of a second gun at the scene. Now, we obtained some video from a witness in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. And in the start of the video, you hear somebody else kind of, who apparently also witnessed this, is kind of giving his account of what happened. And while there's no names mentioned, but as this person is kind of retelling what he heard in the argument, it very much sounds like there was possibly a second gun somewhere there. It says, the kind of words are exchanged, and somebody says, get out of here, I have a gun, to which another person responds, swears at him and says, I've got a gun too. Now, the word too at the end of it would suggest a second gun. Now, again, we don't know.
Or a threat.
No one is named.
Or a threat that there was that it's different to say, hey, I have a gun, you better watch out.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way to know for sure here. And again, it's no one is actually named here, but it certainly suggests the possibility, and it's something to keep an eye on. Now, the police department impounded all of the three vehicles that were involved in that kind of chain reaction crash that led to this shooting. Yesterday they were still searching the cars. They have not said yet what they have found, if anything, in there.
I find
we're hoping that will happen today.
I find it very interesting that this attorney, the defense attorney, is really just throwing out lots of scenarios.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, he's gotten out there in front of the cameras and has said a lot of things. But some of them he mentioned. I think it was Sunday, right after Hayes made his first court appearance. His attorney, John Fuller, had suggested that Hayes was in fact the victim of a hit and run.
Yeah.
Prior to all this. Now, our news partners over at Fox 8 last night got their hands on some surveillance footage that appears to show something like that right near the scene. It's the two vehicles match. It appears like an orange Hummer stops in the street, and a car that very much looks like Smith's Mercedes-Benz bumps into the back of it.
Yeah.
It does not look to be a serious accident by any means. But as the Hummer starts to pull to the side, the SUV goes around it, and then the Hummer goes off after it.
Got it.
So
we
don't know.
We're speaking with Jonathan Bullington. Jonathan is with NOLA.com in New Orleans. Even all of the stuff that is coming out, is there anything that would justify actually firing the gun? And it seems that Smith must have been inside his car when the gun was fired. Is that true?
Well, I know, you know where he was found.
Yeah.
He was found slumped over the steering wheel. His feet were on the ground. In terms of justification, that's the kind of thing that I am certainly not qualified to address. That's for attorneys and the courts. Hopefully this will, all the facts will kind of come out as this goes through the court system.
Got it. Andrew, with a question.
So I've heard, now again, this is just things I've heard, that another possible connection to Will Smith was that the shooter worked as a security guard at the Mercedes, at the Dome. Is that true?
Yeah, I heard about that as I saw Sunday in kind of the frenzy of coverage. I know I saw some emails from one of our sports folks looking into that. I don't know that if that's true or not. That wasn't something I followed up on. So, I guess it's possible, but again, that wasn't something that I focused on yesterday.
Jonathan, I have to tell you that here in the Utica area in upstate New York, Will Smith is known as someone who comes back to the area, even though he has no family here. continued to come back to the area and put on clinics for kids and work with young kids. He was actually scheduled to be here this Thursday and into the weekend. He was going to be throwing out the first puck, dropping the first puck for the hockey game on Friday night. Thursday night, he was going to be here for a big dinner for high school football. Ron Mosier is a reporter with the Observer-Dispatch, who we spoke with yesterday here on the air. And I wanted to bring him into the conversation just to give you an idea of what Will Smith has meant to the people and the young people of this area. Ron, good morning. You're on with Jonathan Bullington from NOLA.com.
Good morning, Bill. Good morning, Jonathan.
Morning.
So tell us, Ron, if you would, some of the things that we talked about yesterday. But this is a gentle guy that started out as a young kid and really did so much good for the young people of the community.
Yeah, like some of the things I've written and said before yesterday after this tragedy, Bill and Jonathan. When Will gave me that call 7 or 8 years ago saying that out of nowhere, he said, you picked that all Mohawk Valley football team, those All-Stars, at the newspaper. Why don't I honor them in some way? And initially, I can tell you, I thought, well, here's the Super Bowl champion. Will probably want to just throw money at it, and I'll fund it. I'll get the plaques and the trophies and the jerseys, and I'll put on a dinner for him. But I was afraid, well, maybe he's going to be a no-show. But that's not Will Smith. That wasn't Will Smith. And he wanted to be here. He didn't want it to be just in his name, which unfortunately, as it goes on, and I'm pretty sure it will go on, that it'll be just in his name, but it'll be in his memory. And he wanted to be here. He wanted to be a part of it. I think that showed how much he cared for players back here. And as I mentioned before, he came from a class at AA large school here, which we don't have many of here, Jonathan. But what was great when he always came back every year for this banquet honoring the All-Stars, he made the greatest impact, I think, on the smaller school, the kids from the smaller schools. They would get his autograph after the banquet. They did get pictures taken with him. And if you had ever interviewed Will in the past, he was something of a gentle giant when you interviewed him, because he was so soft-spoken, so humble. And, I don't even think I'm sure he didn't like coming up to the banquet podium and speaking to a room full of people, because that just wasn't Will.
He didn't
That's why we had different speakers and everything, but Will wanted to make sure he was here.
Hey, Jonathan.
That's what I'll remember.
Does that describe the same Will Smith that you guys know down there in New Orleans?
Certainly. I mean, that's everything Ron just said. It's exactly with everything that we've heard here. Our sports writers have written about folks who, current, former, or all of his former teammates have talked about, people in the community. The memorial that is set up right at the intersection where he was killed grew exponentially on Sunday and Monday. And I was out there on Sunday, and just to see people walk by, stop, take a second, they leave something. It's you have at least two communities now, halfway across the country from each other, kind of reeling after all of this. It's certainly unfortunate.
And the coincidence is just, it's tough to ignore all the coincidences, the connection with the shooter's father. I think I first read about that in your paper, and it's hard to ignore these coincidences.
Yeah, most definitely. It's when you realize that the former police officer who had been dining with Will Smith earlier that night was named in a lawsuit brought by Hayes and his sister following the death of his father 4 months after the storm. It's hard not to look at that and to think, well, maybe there's a connection there. However, I would point out that this is a relatively small city, and strange coincidences like that do happen.
Sure.
try to exercise caution here and realize that right now there's nothing to suggest that that was nothing more than a really eerie coincidence.
And there's a lesson, I think, for all of us, right, when it comes to if this indeed was road rage, that boy, these things can escalate very quickly, and you just don't know who you just bumped into. You don't know if that person has a weapon. There's really a lesson here for everybody.
Well, look, you make an excellent point there, and it's interesting. Maybe a couple of days before this, I wrote a story about a road rage incident where somebody tried to ram another person, and they missed, and they lost control, and their car rolled and plunged 100 feet off of a bridge. I think they're going to survive, but
yeah.
It's certainly a lesson. And the folks I talked to a woman who lives nearby the shooting scene, and that was kind of at the end of the conversation. She started to talk about how it makes her think about how she interacts with other people, and just to kind of be careful and be mindful of that when she's out and about. So there's certainly a lesson there, of course.
I think it's interesting to bring these two legendary newspapers together, the Observer-Dispatch with a great deal of history, and, of course, the Times-Picayune with incredible history. You two together, I'm just saying, I think it would be a very interesting story to see the differences and the similarities of Will Smith and the perception people have of him from his hometown to his new hometown. I think putting you guys together could be very interesting. So, Ron, I appreciate your time, and again, we feel for you, Ron. And Jonathan, thanks for taking the time here this morning.
I appreciate it. Thank you, and thanks to everyone out there.
All right.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, we will break. It's 8:34 at WIBX.